In any kind of game you've ever played, what comes to mind when you hear the word dungeon? I think of some kind of gauntlet, a player running and defeating traps, enemies, and obstacles with some kind of thematic boss at the end to defeat. So many RPGs and similar games implement this idea, but what is a dungeon in OSRS? As far as I can tell, outside of raids and the Barrows minigame, OSRS has dungeons in name only. In reality, they are little more than a cave or a lair where enemies just kind of exist. Sure, they might prove a threat, but rarely are they something you can't just run through. And since monsters go up in strength as you go deeper, but the only point is to reach a certain monster for a Slayer task or a boss fight, you never actually are around monsters that are a serious threat to you. So first question to you as the viewer, do you like dungeons as they stand in OSRS? To me, nearly every dungeon in OSRS is just underwhelming. They are just glorified caves that serve the purpose of allowing a monster to exist somewhere for Slayer tasks, or maybe I guess looting. There are three main exceptions in my mind for this, at least with what I have played, with honorable mentions to both the wilderness and a couple one-off quest areas. One is Barrows. This is, I think, the quintessential dungeon. Like, it's the closest thing that OSRS has to an actual dungeon. You start the gauntlet, you go in, you fight some mini bosses, you run through the underground portion, solve a puzzle, do another fight, and then you get a nice chest at the end. Very simple. It's got all the game systems of a dungeon. You know, I can't really say much more on this. I think Barrows is a great addition when it came out. I would love to see it expanded for a higher level, because at this point, it is a little bit more of a chore to run Barrows because I already know how to perfect all the fights, and nothing in the area underneath it is a threat at all. But I think it's important to look at it has the system and it has the proof that something like this can work, and people like it in OSRS. The next one is the Dagonoth dungeon on Waterbirth Island, and this is something that's a little more personal. The only time I have ever gone to that dungeon was because I had a clue scroll. I guess way deep down in the dungeon, there's one area where you can climb back up and it'll take you to the top of the island, even though you're quote unquote deep in the dungeon. You had to go dig it somewhere there next to a merchant, I think, and you get your clue scroll. But the point was, it was somewhere I had never been before. It had enemies I had never fought, and since I wasn't going to fight a certain enemy, I didn't know if I was actually strong enough to deal with what's in that cave. Particularly, I wanted to make sure I could get all the way through it and then not accidentally click the wrong ladder and then enter the boss fight, because that was what was scaring me. I had this amazing, I guess, experience because I didn't know what was in it. I was prepped. I'm like, okay, how much food do I need to take? Do I need potions? Do I need prayer potions? Do I need defense potions? Is it worth it? Or do I just bring more sharks? And I really didn't know what was in it. Like, I opened up the OSRS wiki, and basically, because that dungeon's pretty lethal where stuff's constantly attacking you and it's all different styles, so you can't just protect from everything, it was something where I had to run through, and once I was committed, I had to keep going. And I just had to have the map up and make sure I'm getting all the right turns, because otherwise I'm gonna go end up in a place I don't want to be, and if I died with all my best gear, I wouldn't have gear or resources to really make another journey to get that gear back. So it was just this amazing experience where it actually felt like I was running a dungeon. Sure, I still was running by everything because I didn't need to kill anything, but I had objects I needed to interact with. Yeah, there's that one area where you quote unquote need 2 players for, and I guess that's kind of a thing, but it's still something, right? And then I think you had those 3 like gravestones you had to knock down. It's not amazing, but it was still like, okay, I need to do this while these monsters are attacking me. It felt more like a game. It felt more like I was doing this gauntlet, but I'm not just there to kill everything or to kill nothing. I had to actually do that and solve the puzzles. So I want to be able to like recreate something like that where I feel pressured. I need to like actually do something more than to show up and kill everything. I need to actually think and be smart about how I go in. I need something that I don't already know the solution to. It's something I can grow as a player and actually try new ideas. And the last one, and I think is the more controversial one, is the underground pass from the quest of the same name. I really like this, and I think it works so well because of how just oppressively difficult it can be and how long it's gotta take to get through that area. It's one of the, again, few times when I played OSRS that it actually felt like I was playing a game. And that's kind of a weird sentiment, and as I've been recording this, that's the thing that kept coming out is, a lot of times I play OSRS very passively. I'll go edit my podcast, and then on the side, I'm actually, say, grinding out a Slayer task. Like when I'm editing this, I can tell you I'm probably over in the cow fight hive shooting like the level 12 cow fight just because it's something, it's some progress. But with Underground Pass, it was like one of the few times where it's like, okay, I need to set aside time. I need to make sure my character is prepped. I did my research, because once I go, that's it. I need to make it all the way through. You don't want to get 20, 30 minutes in, and then you realize, oh, I forgot the rope, but you already used all your resources, so getting out, that's its own thing. And I want to see more stuff like that, just like that, where I feel like Barrows has all the game systems I want, that Dagannoth run had all the threat and just the interactions, and Underground Pass just had this atmosphere to it, that it was actually like lethal, and it felt like a whole game world. It was no longer me just obviously interacting with this system, or me just watching random numbers getting rolled by a PC. It actually felt like a journey my character was taking. I had to prepare, I had to think about it. And I wish I could just take all those highlights from those 3 things and create something in OSRS that gave that same experience and call that a dungeon. As I said at the beginning, I think one of the first things to do this now is raids. I personally haven't done them, but something where you do have to actually fight everything. You have objectives you need to get. You have treasure worth going for, but at the same time, all the enemies are an actual threat. You can't just turn on Protect from Prayer or Melee or whatever and be fine. There's more to it. Like, yeah, you can, but then you're not going to beat it. It's like you can turn yourself invincible for this section, but it doesn't actually help you beat the boss. And maybe I think what I've realized, kind of like talking this out, is I want something like that, but for a singular player. Something like Barrows, where if I just want to go do a quick, like say 20-minute run of some kind of action-packed, fun dungeon encounter, I could do that. And I just feel like there's a void for that, because obviously looking at all these things, I think there's proof that the player base likes that. But again, other than Barrows, nothing that comes to mind is particularly repeatable in OSRS. Like I think about Underground Pass. Yeah, I could go through it again, but I won't get that first time experience. Same with all the quest areas. I think about going into like the Lost Mine, or I think about stuff like for the Legends quest, just these one-off journeys. And I just wish that it had something more, because I feel like since OSRS is so often like this AFK game for me, I want something like this dungeon where I can say, hey, I'm gonna set aside 20 minutes of time. This is gonna take my full attention, and I'm going to try and beat this. But at the same time, it's not just a kill everything or just grind a Slayer task type of thing. And let me know what you think about this. I actually threw out a Reddit post in advance of this video just to see like what everyone else kind of thought of this. And I was surprised. Like some people, they're like, yes, this is what I want. Like, I want fun encounters. I want to fight the enemies. I want to get the loot at the end of the tunnel. And then I had others that came in with a strong like, no, dungeons, that's all they are in OSRs. They are just a cave where the enemies stand around and you go there for your Slayer task and then you kill them. And then sometimes they drop loot. Sometimes they drop nothing. But that's why it's fun. And I guess maybe I'm not on that side, but I'd really like to know what you as a viewer like, because I think it's really the silent majority that would make this stuff work. I guess ultimately, after talking this through and kind of listening to this recording over and over, I feel that OSRS lacks some kind of basic dungeon experience, some kind of immersive, atmospheric, fun to run, rewarding experience that I can do in small groups or as a single player. And that's really what I'm looking for, is as a single player. What can I do to have that experience in OSRS? Because right now, the only thing that kind of hits that is either under-leveled with Barrows or is a one-time thing, like your first encounter in an area, your first time doing a quest, or maybe if you have a scare and you accidentally die and you're stuck somewhere without teleportation or something. But I think it's something the game needs, and if it were there, I know I would play it a lot.